all children are gender confused. Babies are born genderless. And it's not until toddlerhood that they start to identify with one parent or another, or show boy-like behaviors or girl-like behaviors. So, but even going into the school years, boys can be more feminine and girls can be tomboys and be more masculine. And there has always been, should I say, a spectrum for girls and boys, always. It didn't need to be labeled or diagnosed or acted upon. It was just known that children fluctuate in their adopting feminine characteristics and masculine characteristics throughout childhood and even adolescence. So we've done a disservice to children by needing to label it. So there's the labeling again, there's the diagnosing and labeling it.
It's science now because we've given it a name.
Well, it's not science according to certain therapists like myself. I think it's, I think it is, there's a pressure in the mental health community to agree, and I don't agree with the way that we treat children who are struggling with gender identity, because all children struggle with gender identity. A lot of what's happening is adults projecting onto children. Now, not in all cases. I mean, there are some cases organically where you see a little boy at a very young age, very effeminate, like you would say that little boy is in a little girl's body. And you can see that. It's very rare.
Why aren't they just gay? Aren't they just gay?
Yeah, they could be. But in the old days, maybe they would be. But we have to now put a stamp on it, put them in a box, label it, and that then puts them on a track, puts them on a conveyor belt, and off we go, because now you've been labeled. I think all labels put people on conveyor belts. I have people who come to me and say, I'm bipolar. My psychiatrist has me on medicine, I'm bipolar. And as I explore it more with them, I find that they have emotional regulation issues because they had a terrible childhood with probably a borderline mother who never could teach them how to regulate their emotions. But the label was stamped on them at an early age, and down the conveyor belt they go. So it can happen in any kind of situation. So we are stamping children, putting them in boxes, and then treating them accordingly. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake that we are allowing children to make permanent bodily changes before they're adults, because their judgment is so impaired, because they shift so much in their moods, in their identities. It's a constant fluctuation of identity, right? I'm Christian, I'm an atheist. I'm an environmentalist, I'm a Republican. There's a constant fluctuation in children. And so rather than just allowing them to fluctuate without having to label them or put them in boxes or putting them on the conveyor belt where they are going towards permanent changes and permanent boxes. So there's an anxiety in society right now that we have to put children in boxes. And that's a shame for me, because for the most part, the majority of children that are being kind of put in these boxes and labeled and being aggressively treated for these disorders, in many ways, those children might developmentally even outgrow some of that fluctuation if allowed to. But there's so much vigilance about it that it's doing a lot of damage to children.
It came on the scene so rapidly. It was like slow and then sudden that this became something that you were encountering all over the place. What do you attribute that to? Because it really, well, I remember I have a friend who transitioned in like the 50s or 60s. It's real, like a male to presenting as female. And and it's an economist. And I had a bunch of conversations with this person because I was like, help me understand this. But this was not going, it was like 5 years ago. And it was like not even remotely the scale of the conversation and the cultural, Jaguar just did a really ridiculous and kind of pathetic ad campaign about rebranding. And it's just this gender androgynous soup ad. There isn't even a car in it. It's like, how about a car? How about instead of the guy dressed like a girl, how about a car? What do you attribute that to? That culture shift, that's really like aggressive culture shift. And do you think we're coming through the other end of it now?
I think it was rebellious. It was a rejection of structure. It was rebellious. And rather than just saying, okay, this is teenagers being and young adults being rebellious. I mean, again, there have always been transgender people or people that cross-dressed or identified as the other gender, always. I don't know, this may be politically incorrect, but if you remember Saturday Night Live, do you remember Pat?
Yeah, oh yeah, of
In
course.
the 80s? Okay.
Yeah.
I may get really, slammed for mentioning Pat, but Pat was an example of there were always people who didn't quite
Androgynous.
fit into a box, but they were a very small minority, and they still are a very small minority. So it's a little bit of tyranny of the minority, which I think is sort of what's happening with the victimization. Tyranny of the minority, the rise of the individual over communal interests. So is it good for all children to be taught about transgender because there's one child in a class of 20 children who's struggling? We accept all. But do we want to introduce the confusion to all of those children developmentally? And the answer is probably not. So it's the rise of the individual. It's the same kind of thing we've been talking about, the rise of the individual over the community and what the communal interests are. So we want to accept everyone, right? So a lot of those kids who were, hard to figure out in terms of their gender in the 70s or the 80s or whenever, those kids got teased, they were marginalized, and that wasn't fair. And so you'd say, right, the awareness that people are different, that people can be different in many ways, and that we accept all people, whatever their ethnicity, whatever their religion, whatever their whatever identity they are. That's different than proselytizing and teaching these things to very young children who are developmentally not prepared to handle this kind of education because they're not actually developmentally capable of handling a talk about gender confusion. So do we want to accept the minority? Of course we do. Do we want to elevate them to a level that it's taking front and center of the conversation? No, and that's what we've done. We've allowed it to sort of preoccupy us, to sort of dominate the conversation. And there are a very small percent of people in this country. So we want to accept, but we also don't want to proselytize, and that's what's happening.
This has, I have some nephews who are going through medical school, and this gender ideology has permeated the medical schools to some degree. They're like in the Midwest, going to a state school in the Midwest. And we were all together for Christmas last year, and they're like, "Oh, it's super woke. Everybody's saying their pronouns. It's all crazy." Medical school. It's like, this is so. It's like, I guess, did you flunk biology then? I don't understand the institutional embrace. I mean, I think I do, and I think it sounds a lot like everybody else that talks about this, which is just like sort of academic radicalism run amok and echo chambers. But even so, it's like this has been like the break point for, I think, a lot of people, myself included, where it's like the bridge too far. It's one thing to be talking about radical economics, but you're like attacking the foundational human reality of our being, our biological being.
Well, again, undermining the structure of society that keeps society together, the glue that holds society together. You start to take take the glue out and society falls apart, which is what's happening.
It seems like that's the intention.
Right. Deconstructing.
Do you think that would you say that there is an actual active vision of social reform that is fundamentally revolutionary that's underneath all of this?
I think there's an angry, rebellious nature to it, which is, we're going to burn it all down.
Yeah.
And so, and burning down the structure of society is not what we want to be doing. We want to reform society. We want to make it better. We don't want to burn it down. We want to renovate. We don't want to burn it down and have to build a new one, because it took thousands of years to build this one.
So this is more of a philosophical question, which is, at any given moment, there is the norm and there's the fringe.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, that shifts and changes. And the question for the person that wants to struggle with this, what is the truth? What does justice actually mean? Do you have a vision or a way you think about when change is no longer appropriate? Like because there is a kind of, it is, I think, the progressive impulse to say, well, you're never done changing. It's like, well, what point are you never done changing? Well, we've now got gender equality to the point that women are outperforming men in just about everything except maybe STEM and construction. Okay, so are we done then? Aren't we done? It's like, well, no, now we've got to deconstruct what a woman even is. I think we were done before this, but do you have a frame for that? When should we stop? When is enough enough?
People are playing God, because if you're a person of faith, you'd say biologically it's taken thousands of years to create human beings in the form that they're in. And we come with a structure, a makeup, hormones that impact our behavior, our nurturing behaviors. As far as I know, there aren't any men that are giving birth or breastfeeding children.
How dare you?
And probably, hopefully never will be. But the idea is that to deny some of the basic biological sort of truths, the inconvenient truths that it's taken thousands of years to develop as we are as humans. And we're not going to change it all up in 75 years. Or, and the change is happening, as you say, so quickly. So you can't deny the reality that women give birth to children, that they produce certain hormones that affect their nurturing behaviors, or that men have certain nurturing behaviors. And in a way, a lot of the depression and anxiety may very well have to do with suppressing a lot of those behaviors. I see that postpartum has gone up. Postpartum depression has risen dramatically in this country, to the extent that some of the figures I read are 30% of women suffer
30%?
Suffer from postpartum depression. It was 20%. I think it's more like 30%. And what's that about? And what it is about is that we're denying women their natural instincts to want to nurture their children. We're creating conflict for them. So where does depression come from? It can come from trauma, from your own childhood. It can also come from too much stress and conflict. We've created so many conflicts for women who feel pulled in two directions, right? We've created conflicts for men who feel pulled in different directions. Aren't I supposed to be a man, but now I'm supposed to be more like a woman? And so that creates depression and anxiety. So as I said earlier, therapy is not creating the mental health crisis. Society is creating the mental health crisis, and we need to train more therapists to cope with it while trying to change society.
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops each week.